What if I told you there's a creature where the female is 40,000 times heavier than the male? That's not a typo. Imagine if human women weighed as much as a fully loaded Boeing 747, while men were the size of a walnut. Welcome to the bizarre world of the blanket octopus, where evolution decided to throw the rule book out the window and create something that sounds more like a fever dream than reality. This isn't just about size differences. This is about a creature that, immune to one of the ocean's deadliest venoms, rips off the tentacles of its enemies to use as weapons, and has a mating system so extreme it makes praying mantises look tame. For decades, marine biologists knew almost nothing about these creatures. The first complete specimen of a male blanket octopus wasn't even discovered until 2002, despite the females being described way back in 1829. That's over 170 years of scientific head-scratching. Why? Because the males are so tiny, so transparent, and so short-lived that they were virtually invisible to researchers. Let me paint you a picture of what we're dealing with here. A female blanket octopus can grow up to 6 feet long, a shimmering, iridescent creature that looks like she's wearing a flowing cape made of living rainbow. She glides through the open ocean like an underwater superhero, her web membranes billowing behind her in a display that's equal parts beautiful and intimidating. Now, picture the male. He's about the size of your thumb, maybe smaller. He's translucent, nearly invisible, and weighs less than a gram. If you put 40,000 of him on a scale, they'd equal one female. This isn't just sexual dimorphism. This is sexual dimorphism that went absolutely insane. The story of how scientists pieced together the blanket octopus mystery reads like a detective novel. For those 170 years, researchers kept finding these magnificent females drifting through tropical and subtropical oceans, but the males were nowhere to be found. Some scientists wondered if they even existed. Maybe these octopuses could reproduce without males? Maybe they were hermaphrodites? The theories kept piling up, but the males remained elusive. Then in 2002, off the coast of Australia's Great Barrier Reef, researchers finally captured their first complete male specimen. What they found was so bizarre, so miniature, that it challenged everything they thought they knew about cephalopod biology. But here's where it gets really wild. The size difference isn't even the strangest part of this story. Female blanket octopuses have a superpower that would make any comic book hero jealous. They're completely immune to the venom of the Portuguese Man O War, one of the ocean's most feared predators. These floating nightmares trail tentacles up to 165 feet long, armed with millions of stinging cells that can kill fish instantly and send humans to the hospital. The blanket octopus? She doesn't even flinch. Scientists discover that these octopuses actively seek out Portuguese Man O War, carefully tear off their venomous tentacles, and carry them around as portable weapons. Yes, you heard that right. She's immune to the venom and uses the torn-off tentacles as toxic whips against predators. Imagine having your arm ripped off and then watching your attacker use it as a sword. That's exactly what happened in the open ocean, and the blanket octopus does it with what can only be described as calculated efficiency. Researchers at the University of California first documented this behavior in detail, and they were stunned. The octopus doesn't just grab the tentacles randomly. She selects specific sections, breaks them off at precise points, and brandishes them at anything that threatens her. When a predator approaches, she waves these stolen weapons like a medieval knight wielding a morning star. The venom itself is incredibly potent. In humans, Man O War stings cause immediate excruciating pain, welts, fever, and in severe cases, cardiovascular collapse. Fish stung by these tentacles typically die within minutes. The blanket octopus not only touches them deliberately but holds them for extended periods without any apparent discomfort. How is this possible? Scientists studying blanket octopus tissue samples discovered something remarkable in their skin cells. It's similar to how some sea snakes have evolved immunity to certain toxins, but this is even more specialized. The blanket octopus's immunity appears to be specifically evolved for this one predator's venom. This adaptation opens up evolutionary questions that researchers are still exploring. Did the blanket octopus evolve this immunity first, and then start using tentacles as weapons? Or did the behavior come first, creating selective pressure for immunity? It's the classic chicken and egg problem, but with venomous tentacles and tiny transparent males. Speaking of those males, let's talk about their tragic existence. The male blanket octopus has exactly one purpose in life. And spoiler alert, it's not a long-term career plan. He hatches from his egg as a transparent speck, barely visible to the naked eye. From that moment on, his entire existence is a desperate race against time. He must find a female before he dies. That's it. That's the whole life plan. He survives by catching tiny plankton and microscopic prey. And here's the kicker. Unlike the female who can live for several years, the male blanket octopus lives for a few months at most. Some researchers estimate it might be as short as a few weeks. Evolution has essentially turned him into a living sperm packet with just enough intelligence to find a mate. When he finally encounters a female, something extraordinary happens. He has a specialized arm called a hectocotylus, which is basically a detachable reproductive organ. Yes, detachable. The male literally breaks off his sperm-filled arm, hands it to the female, and then drifts away to die. The female, meanwhile, stores this arm in her mantle cavity and can use the sperm to fertilize her eggs whenever she chooses. She might collect arms from multiple males, storing them like a bizarre genetic bank. She's in complete control of if and when reproduction happens. The male has been reduced to such an extreme degree that he's essentially a swimming reproductive organ. He's invested everything into finding a female and nothing into survival. The female, by contrast, has invested everything into survival, growing large enough to defend herself, immune to deadly venom, armed with stolen weapons, and capable of thriving in the open ocean where food is scarce and predators are everywhere. This is sexual selection taken to its absolute extreme. When Charles Darwin first proposed a theory of sexual selection, this is a kind of scenario that would have blown his mind. Let's talk about that cape for a moment, because it's not just for show. The female's blanket, those long, flowing membrane connecting her dorsal and lateral arms, serve multiple purposes. When threatened, she can unfurl this cape to suddenly appear much larger than she actually is. Imagine a predator seeing what looks like a 2-foot octopus suddenly transform into a 6-foot sheet of billowing, iridescent tissue. It's the oceanic equivalent of a jump scare. But researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute discovered something else. When they analyzed high-speed footage of blanket octopuses swimming, they noticed the cape creates unique water currents. The membranes act like a parachute in reverse, allowing the octopus to make sudden directional changes that would be impossible otherwise. She can essentially throw her cape to one side and use it as a sail to dodge attacks. The iridescence itself is another marvel. Unlike many marine animals that use pigments for color, the blanket octopus uses structural coloration. Microscopic layers in her skin reflect and refract light, creating colors that shift and change depending on the angle you view her from. This isn't just beautiful, it's functional camouflage in the open ocean where light patterns are constantly changing. During the day, she reflects the dappled sunlight patterns from above. At dawn and dusk, those same structures can make her nearly invisible against the shifting colors of the horizon. And at night, when bioluminescence is common, her reflective properties can mimic the glow of other creatures, confusing both predators and prey. Here's something that keeps marine biologists up at night. We still don't really know how blanket octopuses find each other. The ocean is vast, unimaginably so. The odds of a thumb-sized transparent male randomly encountering one specific female in millions of cubic miles of water are essentially zero. Current theories suggest chemical communication. The female likely releases pheromones that the male can detect even at great distances. His tiny size, which seems like such a disadvantage, might actually help here. Being small means he can drift on ocean currents with minimal energy expenditure, essentially hitching rides on the same water masses where females are hunting. But we don't have proof yet. We don't know what these pheromones are or how sensitive the males are to them. There's also the question of competition. If a female is releasing chemical signals that males can detect, there should theoretically be multiple males converging on her location. Do they fight? Do they have a first-come, first-served system? We simply don't know because observing these encounters in the wild is nearly impossible. The few observations we do have come from chance encounters with research submersibles and patient surface observations in tropical waters. One marine biologist described watching a female blanket octopus for 2 hours and never seeing a male, then reviewing footage later and spotting what might have been a male in 3 frames. 3 frames out of thousands. That's how difficult this is. From a conservation perspective, the blanket octopus sits in an interesting position. They're not currently considered threatened, but here's the concerning part. We don't actually know enough about their populations to make that determination with confidence. They live in open ocean environments, which are notoriously difficult to study, and are facing increasing pressures from climate change, ocean acidification, and plastic pollution. The Portuguese Man O War populations, their source of weapons, are affected by ocean currents and temperature changes. If Man O War patterns shift, does that impact blanket octopus survival? Climate change is altering ocean currents worldwide. These currents are highways for both blanket octopus females hunting and males searching for mates. Change a currents, and you might inadvertently crash an entire species' transportation system. The males especially, being so small and short-lived, can't afford to waste energy fighting against changing current patterns. There's also the fascinating possibility that blanket octopuses might be indicators of ocean health in ways we don't yet understand. A species with such extreme sexual dimorphism and specialized adaptations is often finely tuned to specific environmental conditions. Change those conditions too rapidly, and the whole system could collapse. Recent research expeditions in the Coral Sea have documented blanket octopus encounters, and scientists are now using environmental DNA sampling to detect their presence in areas where visual observations are difficult. This genetic detective work is revealing that blanket octopuses might be more widespread than previously thought, but also that different populations might be more isolated from each other than expected. The implications are profound. If populations are isolated, each group might be developing its own adaptations. There might not be one blanket octopus story, but several, each playing out in different ocean basins with subtle variations. Here's something that'll make you reconsider everything. The extreme sexual dimorphism in blanket octopuses might not be unique in the deep evolutionary past. What if this is a window into how some ancient species evolved? What if there were dinosaurs or early mammals with size differences this extreme, but we just don't have the fossil evidence because the small individuals rarely fossilized? The blanket octopus is teaching us that evolution can push sexual dimorphism to extremes we never imagined possible. It's rewriting textbooks on how different males and females of the same species can become while still, technically, being the same species. And every time we think we understand the limits of what's possible in nature, something like the blanket octopus shows up and says, "Hold my stolen tentacle." So what have we learned here? The ocean's most unfair love story isn't really about unfairness at all. It's about 2 completely different evolutionary strategies that somehow work together. The female is built for survival, armed, armored, and adapted for the harsh open ocean. The male is built for one thing only: to continue the species before his brief candle flickers out. It's extreme. It's bizarre. It's beautiful in its own strange way. And it's been happening in our oceans for millions of years while we were completely oblivious. The next time you're swimming in tropical waters, remember that somewhere out there, a female blanket octopus is gliding to the depths like an underwater superhero, armed with stolen weapons, immune to deadly venom, and completely unbothered by the tiny transparent male desperately trying to find her before his time runs out. Nature, as they say, is metal,